Disclaimer: the following video will contain spoilers. 4 years after being captured by the grabber, Ethan Hawke, Findlay, Mason Thames, is still traumatized by the events. Meanwhile, his sister, Gwen, Madeline McGraw, begins having dreams of murders at Camp Alpine Lake. Believing it's her calling to figure out these dreams by going to this place, she comes to find a darker past. If you find yourself writing a sequel, you may be asking yourself, where do I start? What if the first movie had a perfect ending that trying to make a sequel would only ruin the flow of the original? Can we continue the story while remaining faithful to the original? Do we write a prequel instead? Should we write a new character into the story and focus on them? Or was there a side character people loved so much that we can actually make a spin-off or a sequel about them? No matter the direction you go, one thing is certain: writing sequels is difficult. On the bright side, there really isn't a right or wrong way to write sequels. In my opinion, picking the right route is important, but what also matters is the content and reasoning behind writing the sequel. Were there unanswered questions you want to tackle in the sequel? Is there more to the story to tell? For example, in the journey of the protagonist, say the original has him accept the role of a father, and the sequel is him continuing to understand what being a father truly is. He still has to grow and learn after accepting his role as a father from the original movie. Or are you just milking the success of the original by making a sequel as a means to gain more money, or making this story and universe a franchise? My point is that when looking to make a sequel, we have to view the full picture. We have to consider even the tiniest and mundane details to really understand which route to take. My video won't go into the nitty-gritty details of each route. Instead, I want to go over what, in my opinion, a sequel should tackle. That is, 1. Stick to continuity, whether it be world building, or the magic system, or relations between characters, etc., etc. An example is not reverting the protagonist to his flawed self that we already saw him overcome. 2. Expand the world. This can either be done by venturing further inward in this universe, explaining further intricate and mysterious phenomena that were left unexplored in the original, or adding a new element, a new form of threat, whether it's an evolved version from the original or an entirely new threat that does not break continuity. And 3. Do not repeat the same story in both theme and structure. When it comes to Black Phone 2, it checks out these 3 boxes, making it a worthy sequel in my opinion. So, without further ado, let's take Black Phone 2 and see one way we can make a sequel. Let's begin. Be faithful to the source material. There are times when a movie does so well at the box office and in public appraisal that a sequel is inevitable. Many writers see the success of the first one and eagerly go on to write its sequel, sometimes even writing with the possibility of transforming this world into a franchise. While there's nothing wrong with that, many writers make the mistake of viewing the second movie entirely separate from the first. This leads to retcons and continuity errors that break the movie's flow when seeing it all together. This is commonly done when events or characters are changed to better fit the movie without seeing how this detail affects the first movie, or others that came before. Franchises like Terminator and Halloween come to mind. Either way, this decision often splits the audience because the first movie alludes to the story's future path, but pivots in the second movie, completely missing the mark or altering the theme and characters' behavior and arc that the audience fell in love with. For example, you do not want a character to overcome trauma in the original, but then need to overcome the same trauma in the sequel, reiterating the same arc the protagonist already went through. This was the case for Ralph in Ralph Breaks the Internet. His character had to once again overcome his trauma of being alone. Sure, there's a small difference in the movie as he wants to keep what he got from the first movie, but he makes the same mistake again, which leaves the viewers questioning if he really went through this arc in the first place. Not to mention the retcon this movie had with the original, and how Penelope was able to abandon her game, go turbo, and write herself onto another game with no problem whatsoever. This undermined the original movie's major plot because the continuity of the world's rules were broken. What you can do instead is have the characters not fully grow. They have taken what they've learned from the original movie, but are faced with a new problem. They don't know how to move on with their life, or they don't fully know how to put what they've learned into practice. Going back to the example I provided with the father, in the sequel, we do not reiterate this character's flaw being that of him not accepting his role as being a father. Instead, we add obstacles to what it means to be a father, which provides a flawed character needing to overcome these new obstacles in order to fully grow. The good part is that Black Phone 2 achieves this. Black Phone 2 chose the route to continue the story where it left off. Of course, to account for natural aging, the movie is set 4 years after the events of the first movie. We continue exploring the lives of both Finn and Gwen and how they've navigated through life after going through such harsh conditions. Finn, now traumatized by past events, is in a constant battle with his mind. The lingering effects of this trauma have made him resort to weed as a means to calm himself down and drown out the pain. What we will soon see is that he makes the same mistake his father, Terrence, Jeremy Davies, made with alcohol after his wife died. It is clear that despite winning the battle, he has not yet won the war. Something is troubling him. Something is still causing him to make all the wrong choices. In other words, he is still flawed despite growing from the first movie.
You are stronger than you think. You were strong enough to kill the grabber, and you are strong enough to let what happened with him go. I don't know how to do that.
Gwen deals with being an outcast on account of her psychic abilities. She continues to have these dreams, but they have escalated, with the lines between reality and these illusions being blurred. Gwen is unable to identify reality. In a state of panic, she wants to understand what's going on by trying to understand what her dreams mean. However, this goal has obstacles that must be overcome, and her biggest obstacle is overcoming fear. She too is driven by fear, where only by facing your fears can she and Finn fully grow.
Gwen, fight back!
Therefore, in terms of continuity, character-wise, Black Phone 2 did a good job keeping these characters the same. They overcame obstacles, but are now presented with entirely different ones. They have not fully grown. Although it appears that Finn is undergoing the same obstacles, facing your fear, he faces a new kind of fear. Before, he had to face a physical threat. Now, he has to face a psychological one. Yes, he is physically strong, being able to kill the grabber and all, but he is still flawed. Deep down, he's scared, and the actions he's taken still makes him a flawed character because he chose the wrong path.
Safe.
You're gonna take care of me, Finn? You can't even take care of yourself. You are just like f***ing Dad, putting your head in the sand and numbing yourself into oblivion.
Whoa! Where did that come from?
You're just smoking your f***ing life away to pretend none of this happened. And you two just want to run and hide like you always do. Anything to stop the pain.
Shut up!
Anything to feel for a few hours like what happened to you down in that basement wasn't real.
Shut up!
Armando, Damien Bichir, tells Finn that he uses anger as a way to prevent facing his fear, and that Finn eventually needs to face his fear to be able to let go of what's holding him down. This is true and present in the movie because upon first introduction, Finn continues to fight people, whether they started or not. He resorts to violence and weed in the hopes that it would solve his problems. But without actually doing what must be done, these actions are just temporary solutions. When their father arrives, Gwen brings the hard truth that Finn is drowning himself in weed, trying to numb the pain away, much like his father once did with alcohol. Finn then reveals his true feelings of the situation. He doesn't want to be angry and afraid anymore. Being angry and smoking weed were not the solution.
Oh, God, I don't want to be angry anymore. I don't want to be afraid anymore.
I would like to point out that in the scene with Mondo, when Mondo begins talking to Finn, the camera is behind them. But only when things get real does the camera move forward to show their faces. It becomes more personal, and Finn listens to Mondo's words of advice, but he has yet to put it into practice. Either way, the camera work in this scene was nice. In short, he doesn't relearn how to be brave. He learns how to stop using anger as a scapegoat for fear. Similarly, Gwen overcomes her fears and learns to face them head on.
What are you doing?
Isn't it obvious? I'm fighting back, you grievous, festering ass wound.
As for the world building and lore, one of the benefits that really helped the Black Phone 2 was how vague and unspecific a lot of details were in the original. There were no explanations of how or why the Black Phone was there or how it works, no explanation of Gwen's dreams, etc., etc. So this was a major convenience for a sequel to explore more of this world. We also explore the past with Hope Adler and Allure, and her involvement with Camp Alpine Lake, and the cause of her death. As a side note, I would like to say that for this scene, when we do explore Hope's unfortunate end, Terrence should have said something more unique. What did you do and what have I done isn't something unique. So when Gwen tells her father what he said as a way to get him to realize that what she's saying is true and that her dreams actually mean something, doesn't hit as hard as it could have.
No! What did you do? What did you do? What have I done?
What did you do? What did you do? And you blamed yourself.
Anyway, all of this ties in with the present story, and we start to see how everything begins connecting, from the grabber to Gwen's dreams, creating an interesting story that brings elements of a sequel and a prequel that continues exploring this world and its characters. Therefore, I wouldn't consider any continuity breaking in this sequel, besides not including what happened to the girl who seemingly liked Finn and vice versa, if you want to nitpick. However, it was a nice continuation that stays true to its characters, lore, and world. Each character remains true to its source, yet has more to learn, making this movie not seem like it's retelling the same story when it comes to the protagonist's arc. I'll come back to this shortly. It utilizes the world and its lore to explore another story, all while being entertaining. In summary, while thinking about the sequel, keeping in mind continuity is a good way to create the story's strong base. This also helps prevent retcons and errors that might come up later on when writing, even when adding in that new element. The new element. One way to spice up a sequel is by introducing a new element. Higher stakes, expanding the established universe, deeper lore, and deepening character development are perfect ways to add new elements for a sequel. Inside Out 2 introduced new emotions. It was part of the story as Riley began puberty, but it added new stakes, new environments, and new characters into the mix. Exploring more of the mysterious underground world in John Wick 2 onward allowed viewers to be more immersed within the secret society, all while following John Wick through his journey. Just keep in mind that this new element, whether it be world, stakes, or characters, cannot break the continuity or overshadow the original. Otherwise, you end up with a terrible sequel. Again, Rough Breaks the Internet falls under this category, where this movie completely shatters the message and plot of the original. So when looking back at Black Phone 2, we see that we do explore more of the world, we deepen character development, and we add higher stakes. I briefly touched base with exploring more of the world and deepening character development, but here's a small recap. We introduce new characters all while explaining events of the past, i.e. the death of Hope, and the introduction of Wild Bill. It deepens character development because Finn hasn't fully grown, as he now needs to learn to let go by facing his fears instead of letting anger be the answer. And Gwen also needs to find courage and strength to overcome her own fear. But what I haven't talked about is the higher stakes. That comes with the supernatural element of the grabber being able to interact with the real world. Now, I do have to pause here and warn you that not every new addition is a good thing, so think carefully before you add it. Not only do you need to explain this new addition, but you have to ask yourself how integral it is to your story, how this new addition changes the course of the story, both thematically and with continuity, and how this change affects the characters. Not thinking things through can result in a somehow Palpatine returned situation, destroying various things the previous movies were setting up and being completely out of left field, causing your movie to suck. But going back to Black Phone 2, although there was a supernatural element to this movie, it has a deeper meaning than just bringing back the grabber. The effects of trauma are persistent. Even though the threat is gone, it's almost like its presence is still tormenting you. This never truly seems to go away, and therefore, neither did the grabber. It is only by letting go that it ever goes away, something the movie does a good job of, thematically speaking. It also provides pretty good stakes as the grabber, being full of rage, seeks vengeance for what Finn did to him. He wants to hurt Finn by killing Gwen, utilizing her dreams to manifest himself onto the real world to inflict damage to her. Now, whether this was a good new addition is entirely your opinion. So let me know what your thoughts were about this down in the comments below. Though I will agree that his presence and threat should have been stronger, as it does feel like he doesn't add much stakes. Sure, he plays with his food because fear is what helps add flavor, as they say.
You want to scare me?
You know as well as I do that fear is just a warm-up.
But there should have been at the very least a bit more irreversible damage, whether it be the death of someone or the possibility of Gwen dying. But I will say that his ability to hurt these characters from beyond the grain was arguably a good way to continue the story. It had a unique spin where, although it missed the mark here and there, it was entertaining. There's also the spiritual warfare aspect to the movie, but unfortunately I think it missed the mark here because it does have its flaws, Christian themed speaking. But then again, this movie isn't a faith-based movie, so I don't expect it to be true to scriptures or the gospels. Which is a shame, really, as the movie explores the themes of courage and faith, but undermines the very thing it's about.
I don't know, Mustang.
You know what, you want to be all yellow-bellied and barn sour, lock yourself in this room until it's safe, you go right ahead. But that ain't no kind of true Christian behavior.
Either way, the grabber being a demonic manifestation that works hand in hand with Gwen's dreams is a new element that helped the sequel be different than the story before it. Hey, I've seen this before. When writing a sequel, there comes the possibility of writing the same movie again without even realizing it. So if you want to write a worthy sequel, be sure to proofread, reread, and look over your script various times. And no, the phrase, "if it ain't broke, don't fix it," doesn't work all the time with sequels, so tread carefully. For example, movies like Speed 2, Cruise Control, and The Hangover Part 2 are essentially the same story, just coded differently, which reduces the high stakes the first movie had, as a bus is more intense than a cruise ship, or the group of friends undergoing the same situations they once were in reduces the original stakes, in my opinion. Instead, what you want to do is go a different direction that doesn't steer too far away from the original movie's intent. Sure, you have movies like Aliens that completely changed the tone of the movie, going from a claustrophobic sci-fi thriller to a sci-fi action flick. It did not stray too far from the source material. Is it necessary to change the tone? No. Black Phone 2 kept the themes of courage, faith, and facing your fears that the first movie had, while having a different story for the sequel. Of course, the sequel included new themes like the lingering effects of trauma and grief. What I'm simply saying is not repeating the same story, thematically and character arc speaking. And although you can argue that Finney underwent a similar arc, it was entirely different, as I've stated before. The story isn't about ghost children helping someone escape his abductor. It's about finding the bodies of these children to put them to rest. while being threatened by the very thing that killed them, and at the same time, letting go of this tormentor once and for all. This is why I liked how the POV seemingly changed from Finn to Gwen for the second movie, because we get to explore the same universe and characters we love, but with a new perspective. Gwen and her dreams. We don't undermine Finn's character, nor do we alter them in any way. Both characters are faced with problems that the journey helps them overcome. Sure, this movie brings in questions like, will Gwen continue having dreams like this again? Does that make her a sort of bridge between the spiritual and the real world? Is it only black phones that are out of commission that these spirits can communicate with? At least for this one, I kind of doubt it, considering Wild Bill communicated with Armando with a radio. But all of these questions can be answered in a third installment, because you very well know Hollywood will not pass up the opportunity to milk a franchise. The point I'm trying to make is that not repeating the same story will make the story feel fresh and unique. It would make audiences like the movie more because they wouldn't feel like they just paid their hard-earned money for a movie that they already saw.
Hello? My name is Gwen. I said my name is Gwen.
This also allows you to continue the world and the story with future installments if you want. Though please keep in mind that is not 100% necessary. You do not want to beat the dead horse. In conclusion, if you want to write a worthy sequel to your story, you have to keep continuity in mind. Add a new element that might bring attention to this new story. And do not repeat the same story. In my opinion, though there were some faults within this movie, I believe Black Phone 2 is a worthy sequel because it checks off these 3 boxes. At the very least, it's a movie we can see how we can write a sequel based on what this movie did.
This is where he started. These boys were his first kills.
And Wild Bill became the grabber.
Maybe his spirit draws power from the fear of his victims because their spirits are not at rest.
How do we find these boys?
Also, a little side note, do not go sequel baiting. Focus on the story itself, and if all goes well, a sequel will come. Sure, it's okay to look into the future, but don't have that future vision force your current story, because you don't know the reception the sequel is going to get. And yes, it is true, Hollywood unfortunately takes the success of the original and takes advantage of that love just to make movies that make money. Is the reason why a lot of the times they gravitate towards sequels and not original content. But as long as you put careful thought and care into your sequel, you're off to a good start. But anyway, those are just my thoughts. Did you enjoy the movie? Let me know what you thought about it down below, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then, God bless.